Welcome to the Java Build Tools course. I'm Richard Chesterwood, and I've taught quite a few of the virtual pair programmers courses so far. And one question I've been asked for the last few years now is, when are you going to do a course covering Ant and Maven? So here it is. This is the introduction chapter for the course, and we won't be doing any proper work in this chapter, but do stay with me because you'll need to get your programming environment set up, and we'll do that in this chapter. This course covers 3 of the big build tools used in the Java industry: Ant, Maven, and Gradle. I'll talk a bit in this chapter about the tools, why you would want to use one, and their pros and cons. I've designed this course for anyone who needs to use any 3 of the tools, especially if you're starting from the beginning. Many Java programmers find themselves having to hack build scripts without really knowing what you're doing, and of course that can be dangerous. So my aim on this course is to give you a thorough understanding of what's really going on with the tools. And I'll be encouraging you to gain familiarity with all of the reference manuals, so that given any situation on a real project, you should be able to solve your own problems. I have to stress this course isn't really designed to make you an expert in any of these 3 tools. You can get really deep with all of them, but this is intended to get you confident enough to be able to work with the tools to a good degree of competency on a professional project. If you already know the tools and want to get really advanced with them, then this probably isn't the right course for you. There are lots of build tools available in the Java world, but there are 2 huge ones, the big gorillas in the industry. In part 1, we'll look at Ant. We'll be spending 6 chapters on Ant, starting from the basics. We'll see how to sequence tasks, how to compile, how to run unit tests, generate documentation, and so on. And we'll understand about the structure of a good build script when we study targets. Ant's the oldest of all of the build tools. It's well over a decade old now, and for years it was the default build tool that most projects used, or at least projects that actually did builds. So Ant is well tried and tested. The problem with Ant is, well, it's over a decade old, and the syntax that was developed a decade ago is now very dated. So, honestly, it's not much fun to work with, but we're covering it here on the course because it's still used in projects all over the world, so you need it in your toolbox. In part 2, we'll switch to Maven, and we'll do exactly the same things as we did with Ant. But we'll see how Maven is radically different. I believe in order to understand Maven, you need to understand plugins and lifecycles. So that will be a key part of this course. Maven is chapters 8 through to 13. Maven came along a few years after Ant, and its express purpose, the reason it was designed, was to get rid of Ant. It's much cleverer than Ant, and you can do a lot more with it with less work. The problem with Maven is that sometimes it's a bit too clever, and it can be hard to know what's going on. So on the course, we'll try to give you a good understanding. Maven's getting more and more popular, and while I don't have figures to hand, I suspect it's more commonly used than Ant these days. In part 3, we look at Gradle. We only need 2 chapters for this because Gradle reuses many of the concepts from Ant and Maven. So I will assume that you already know both of those tools, and that will speed us up. This one is really new. It combines the best of Ant with the best of Maven. As it's much newer, it isn't used on as many projects, but I'm hoping that it gets more and more popular and it might even kill off Ant or Maven one day. But I'll let you decide for yourself whether it's better than those two tools. We'll be spending just over an hour on Gradle. In all three parts, we'll finish off by deploying a web application to Tomcat. This is so that if you're doing any of our Java web development courses, you'll be able to do everything you need. But if you're not doing web development in Java, then don't worry, you can skip the web chapters. We call our style of training virtual pair programming. Rather than listening to hours of lectures, you'll be working at the same time as me in your own development environment. We'll be doing most of the work from scratch, so you'll be writing your own build scripts for yourself. And of course, at the end of the course, you'll be able to take those scripts away with you and use them on your own real-life projects. A problem is that obviously I can't see your screen. So we've tried to design the course so that you should have the fewest problems possible, as long as you follow along with me. But if you do hit problems, we're here to help. When you do hit a problem, the first thing I would recommend is that you visit the course page at the virtualpairprogrammers.com website. There's a page there for Java build tools. And you'll find on there a tab for the errata. Now, the errata for the course will list any errors that we've had reported once the course is released. Well, we haven't released this course yet, so there are none reported at the moment. But by the time you do this course, there may be some listed there. I think it's really the nature of build tools, because they're quite fiddly, that we are probably going to get quite a few errors reported against the course. That's perfectly normal. Also, I run my own blog, and where I find there are things missing or I want to go into further detail on some subjects, you might find some more detail under this tab here, where I'll list any blog posts for this course. But if the errata and the blog posts don't help, then please do contact us. On our website, you'll find a link which will either be called Contact or Support, and you can raise a call with us through this link. We are about to upgrade our support system, so you might see a different page to the one you see here, but it should be fairly self-explanatory. There's one problem with support, and that is we are working programmers and we are often busy on projects ourselves, so we can't guarantee a fast response. We're currently promising around a 48-hour response period, and at weekends and evenings it will be a lot slower than that. So I'm sorry we can't be any quicker than that, but I promise we will respond. The very worst thing for us would be that you hit a problem, you can't go any further in the course, and you get frustrated and don't complete. Please contact us, and we're here to help. Now, of course, there are a lot of Java development environments in the world, but I have to choose one of them, and I've gone for Eclipse for the recordings, as I have done on the other virtual pair programmers courses. If you're experienced in Java, then you can use any development environment you like, but if you then have problems, it's going to be really hard for us to help if you're using anything other than Eclipse. So I strongly recommend, even if just for the course, that you use Eclipse as well. You can download Eclipse from the eclipse.org website that you can see here, and you can choose either Eclipse Standard, or you can use the Eclipse IDE for Java developers. Actually, for this course, the Java developers version is a better choice because it does ship with Maven integration, which you might need for the second part of this course. If you already have Eclipse Standard, then you can install a plugin to use Maven, so we'll worry about that when we get there, but I strongly recommend you use Eclipse, which will help us to help you. You will also need to have installed a full Java development kit. Eclipse ships with just a Java runtime. You'll need a full JDK. And if you don't have one of those installed, you can find it at the rather cumbersome address you can see there. But if you just Google Java JDK, it will bring you here. And you're looking to install one of the Java SE installations, make sure you choose the JDK. You'll find all of the software and code that you need for this course as part of your course package. Either you've ordered a DVD, in which case the practicals and code will be on the DVD, or if you're downloading from our website, then if you've gone to My Courses and then you've gone to Java Build Tools, the very last item on the chapter list is called Practicals and Code. That's a zip file. It's about 69 megabytes and you can download it from there. When you've unzipped that, you'll find there are 3 folders inside there. First of all, there's the software folder. And inside there, we've given you a copy of each of the 3 tools, Ant, Maven, and Gradle. As it happens, you don't need to install any of these right now. In the case of Ant, we'll be using the built-in Ant that comes with Eclipse, and with Maven, we'll be using a plugin. So for parts 1 and 2 of this course, you don't need to install these right away. Right at the very end of the course, I will show you how to run the tools from the command line. If you do want to do that, then you'll need these, but you don't need them until much later on in the course. There's then a folder called Starting Workspace. I'll come to that one in a moment. And the workspaces at the end of each part is where I've given you a snapshot of the workspace at the end of the Ant section of the course, the Maven section, and the Gradle section. So that might be useful if you get stuck, say in the Maven section, and you want to have a look, just look inside there, if you want to have a look at one of the completed files. But really the important workspace is back up in the root, this starting workspace. You'll want to copy that to a good location on your hard drive. Now I'm just firing up Eclipse and it's asking for the workspace I want to work in, and I'm going to browse now to the folder that I've just copied. I happen to have it on my desktop, but it really doesn't matter where you have it. So you just need the workspace there and then click on OK. And eventually Eclipse will start. We're not interested in this welcome tab, so I'll close that. Now, the slightly alarming thing, we've had quite a few support calls about this, is that by default, Eclipse won't find the projects that are inside that workspace. Notice the Package Explorer here is blank. Here I'm showing you the contents of the starting workspace in Windows Explorer. We've actually got 2 projects inside there. The first one is just called Projects and is for the Ant part of the course. I wish I'd called that Ant project now, but I didn't think to do that when I started recording, and it's too late now because all of the videos are recorded. So Project is for the Ant part of the course, and then Maven project, of course, is for the Maven part of the course, and we reuse that project for the Gradle section, so that's why there's only 2 projects. There's also a Tomcat folder there and a Tomcat file, which I don't need to talk about right now. I'll talk about those when and if you do the web part of the course. So I want to right now open up the Ant project. And the easiest way to do that, there are various ways you can import it and do all kinds of complicated things, but the way that works for me is go to the File menu, select New, and Java Projects. Now I know the project already exists, but it's sort of just creating a new reference to the project in the workspace. The key thing is for project name, you need to type in the name of the folder that's containing the project, and that's project with a capital first letter. And as soon as you type that last letter there, the last T, you'll notice that the info here says the wizard will automatically configure the environment. If you click on Finish from there, Eclipse will open a project, it will configure the build path and really do everything automatically. Now, I'd just like to give you a little overview of what this project contains. It is a copy of the final project from our Spring MVC course. Now, don't panic. You don't need to have done the Spring MVC course. I've just taken this project as an example Java project. It's got in there a console application, it's got a full website, and it's quite a rich project, so it should be quite a challenging project to build. I'll talk later about the Spring MVC aspects of it, and feel free for yourself to explore around what's inside here. I'll just give you a quick overview. Inside the SRC folder are a collection of packages, regular Java code really. Inside reference libraries is a large collection of jar files. There's about 50-something jar files in this project. And in the web folder, there are some web pages that the project will need when we finally come to deploy this to a web server. And there's a couple of other configuration files in there as well. If you want to see this project running, you can look inside the client package, and there's a test harness called Spring Client. Although this is a web application, the intention of this class is that you can do a quick and dirty test of the project. And you should be able to right-click on this, select Run As, and Java Application. And if everything is going well, in the console you should see a list of books. This is some kind of a bookstore that the project is for. If you're not seeing that and you've had any problems importing the project, then, as I mentioned before, do send us a message. To close this chapter, I want to talk briefly about why do we want to use a build tool? Because if you think about it, in a modern development environment like Eclipse, building a Java program is pretty easy. And in fact, we just did that. We just opened a project and we ran the program. It was quite simple. And if we were to make changes to this project, just by clicking on the Save button or pressing Control S, you know that Eclipse can do a build, and it's compiling this Spring client, and it's automatically giving me a list of any problems in the project. Of course, I'll want to undo that and save it again, and now the code's compiling clean. So Eclipse can do building. Why do we need these big complicated tools like Ant and Maven? Well, really, this form of building is okay when it's just a single developer working on a simple project. And by simple, I mean, yeah, I can just run this program right here in a basic console window. But as projects get more complicated, we have more things to think about. For example, it might be that we need to check in our code into some kind of version control system every time we run a build. Well, we're not going to use a version control system on this course, but you may well be doing that on a project. Maybe every time that we run our code, we want to automatically run all of the unit tests for this system. By the way, in this sample code, I do have some unit tests. You'll find them in the domain package. If you just drop that down, there are 2 tests. They're JUnit tests. A real project would have a lot more than that naturally, but I've just put 2 in as samples. And I can run those very easily by right-clicking on the project, selecting Run As, and JUnit Test. And there 3 tests ran, and it looks like 1 of them is failing, and 2 of them are passing. That was easy enough to run. The problem is I had to remember to do that. It might be nice, or it might be a rule that you have on your project that you want to run the tests every time we attempt to compile or run the project. Another thing is it's easy enough to run a console program like this one, just right-clicking and pressing the play button. But if you're writing a web application, which we have here, then things are a lot harder. Many projects will package their Java application into a jar file or a WAR file so that it can be run on a server. I don't know what type of project you're familiar with, so if you don't know what I'm talking about there, don't worry too much. But if you've done any Java web development, then you'll know that we need a web archive, a WAR file, containing all of this information in order to run it on a server. We'll be doing that in a later chapter, and if you want to know the theory behind that, we do have a course on Java web development. Now at the moment, unless I put a plugin or something into the development environment, then in order to create one of these WAR files, I'm going to have to take all of the files in the project, I'm going to have to zip them up and move a few files around as well, and it's all going to get very tedious. And I have worked on some projects where they didn't use build tools, and every time they wanted to test their application, they had to do that kind of thing, clicking on the project, zipping everything up, putting files in the right places, and that process would take several minutes, and that was every time they wanted to test their application. That's why on this course we're going to use a variety of tools to automate a full build process. And the ultimate goal is that however complex our build process is, we can run the full build using a single command. That will either be on the command line or by pressing a single button here in our IDE. One final advantage of using a build tool is that because all three build tools can run outside of the development environment, you end up with a build that is completely IDE independent. So if we decide to switch to NetBeans, IntelliJ or whatever, the build tools can still run against my project and they will run in the same way. And that also means you could even get rid of the IDE and use a basic text editor for the coding. And then when you're ready to build, you run your Ant, your Maven or Gradle. That's an extreme option, but it's becoming more popular. You might lose things like code completion, but you do end up with a simpler working environment. Whatever the reason for needing a build script, we're going to be covering three of the big ones in the industry. So that's it for the introduction. You don't have to do the Ant part of the course if you want to skip straight to Maven, so it's up to you. You do need to understand Ant and Maven before you can do part 3 on Gradle. So if you do want Gradle, then either bring your own previous knowledge of Ant and Maven or study parts 1 and 2 first. So I'll see you again either in chapter 2 for Ant or chapter 8 for Maven.